You're listening to the Player Layer podcast. I'm Ivan Alexiev, and today I'll be talking to two of the creators behind Budgie Smuggler Games, which is a new publisher coming with their first game called Renegade Legion. On GameFound, you can find links below. And I was very happy to talk with them because I thought their game was awesome. And we got to talk about a lot of subjects which I haven't talked with other designers before because first of all, this game is a tabletop war game, which is a little bit different than most of the games that I play. And second of all, it's based on an IP, which was very interesting to me how they acquired the IP and what kind of the process behind that is, because I know a lot of people are also interested in that. And finally, I just think what they're doing is very cool. They're involving a lot of writers, so they're really going really deep into the world building. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think you will too. Thank you so much for listening. Everything you say and being used against you.
Excellent. No, I like that. Thank you for having us on, by the way. This is really awesome.
Yeah, no, thank you guys for, I tried your game and I really enjoyed it. So
Thanks, thank you.
I'm looking forward to learning more about how you guys found each other. From
oh my god, that is a terrible story with police and international espionage. No, just kidding. No, me and Matt have a really fun origin story because I've known him for going over a decade now, right, Matt?
Yeah, I think it was about 2009, 2010 we first started chatting.
Yeah, it was right after my time with Games Workshop. So yeah, it's been over a decade now.
Yeah, what was your time in Games Workshop like?
I actually
what is it? You can't just drop a name like that, and yeah.
That's fair. I actually worked for Games Workshop for a little over a year in 2008, 2009 timeframe, if memory serves correctly, for GW corporate here in US when they were still in Maryland and Glen Burnie. Working for, at the time, it was their prototype hunter-gatherer group that worked with independent stockists and stuff, essentially doing the right thing in the mid 2000s, making up for some of their practices that they were not so well known for in a positive way in previous years, as well as building back the stockist program with new game stores. And this was around the time when the housing market and the economy here in the United States was really bad. So game stores were opening and closing at an alarming rate. Mm-hmm. And so Games Workshop took steps to kind of help shepherd and protect what is essentially the bread and butter of their business here in the U.S., especially since, like I said, that the housing market and so the real estate market was really bad, and they were closing their own stores as well. So independent stockists were their way of course selling product. So it was the prototype hunter-gatherer group that I was with, and it kind of helped develop. I had I think it was 9 or 10 state range, including small states like South Dakota and North Dakota here, which doesn't have a ton of game stores. So I had way more states than some of the other guys. And I also worked with their community development program. So I did stuff with Ard Boys, the original Ard Boys campaign here in the United States when they were releasing Armageddon for the first time, and the re-release of the Orc line of models and vampire counts and a few others.
Mm-hmm. And are you still full-time in the gaming industry?
No, believe it or not, my full-time job right now is I'm actually transitioning to do full-time gaming, but right now I'm still the managing director for a craft brewery.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Are you in Maryland, by the way? Because there's a lot of board game content creators that are there, and Quacklope's there, and some designers I work with.
No, actually, I'm not. I was only up there for about a year and a half. It was essentially, for me, it was contract work because they were in the process of transitioning to Tennessee, to their Memphis facility, like full time. That's actually where their U.S. manufacturing was at the time, and they were relocating their headquarters from Maryland to Memphis, Tennessee. And had been living in Florida for a really long time, and I was actually separate from my wife at that time. She stayed down here while I went up north to work. And with the jump to Tennessee, I was like, all right, I'm moving back to Florida. I miss my family. So I ended up coming back down here after that time. But I had previously, from Games Workshop, I'd been working with Catalyst Game Labs, who I've maintained a relationship with all the way through. That's actually how I brought Matt into gaming, was through Catalyst. Officially official. That's where he got his like first official credits.
Mm-hmm.
I think, right, Matt? Is that correct?
Yeah, you were my fairy godmother into official credits.
Yeah, I took a big leap of faith on this guy. I never met this Aussie, and I was like, you know what? He does some really great stuff, and his family's awesome. And I was like, this needs to be someone we work with. So I came back down to Florida after Games Workshop, continued to work with Catalyst through BattleTech, and then got involved in craft beer. And if I have the time, energy, and effort, my ultimate goal is to get some form of bakery, so then I can be like vertically integrated, like all the way through from like games, beer, and snacks. And then that would be like the ultimate retirement goal for me. Like that's what I would love to see happen. I'm joking. I don't want to own a bakery ever. That seems like a lot of work with early hours. That's not good at all.
Yeah. Matt, what were you like doing at the time? What got you into games? Well, actually, other than Josh.
I've come from a family with a huge love of history, and I sort of got into gaming that way when I'd read history books and go, oh, I wonder how I could turn this into a game. And I counted RPGs and tabletop games and wargaming and things along the way. And I was always tinkering and designing with things, trying to come up with my own systems or modify systems. And I'd, of all things, started a fan fiction within the BattleTech universe. And of course, it created this enormous game around it. And we had this big gaming group that was fighting out the battles of the BattleTech universe across this vast stage with maps and spreadsheets and all sorts of fun. And I reached out to Josh through a mutual friend who had said, you should try and get a little website up for this to help the players. And they said, Josh is the person to talk to. So Josh and I got talking through that. And then eventually Josh joined our gaming group and ran mad havoc through the game breaking things, which was good fun. And at the end, not the end of that, so halfway through that, I was asked through the graces of Josh and a couple of the other fellas within the BattleTech crew to come in and start working there. So I was doing some rules development on one of the big rule books, I think it was Strategic Ops or Interstellar Ops. Wrote some source book stuff, did mapping and unit tracking, helping out the senior developers with keeping a lot of the vast lists of armies straight within the canon. And then at the end of my tenure there, I got to do a bit of fiction writing as well, which was great. And then, through all that, towards the end of it, Josh and I started talking about Renegade Legion, which is its own story, which that was, for me, more of a bolt out of the blue, because Josh had been planning this for a while and was then starting to think who we wanted to have as part of the team. And then Renegade Legion grew out of that.
Yeah, what was sort of the time frame? Actually, just to explain for just people who are just listening, what's your idea with Budgie Smuggler games and sort of what Renegade Legion is? Because I know it's sort of an older IP that you acquired. Is that right?
So with Renegade Legion, it is an old IP. It was around in the late 80s, early 90s, and FASA had originally designed it to be the gaming system for the Star Wars universe. But West End Games won out there. And so FASA adapted it to be a different universe. And so there was the big influence of Star Wars on it. And really interestingly, we were talking about this the other day, there's a big influence of NATO and the late Cold War within Renegade Legion as well, when you look at some of the art and some of the concepts they had in it. And when FASA decided to make this their own instead of using it for Star Wars, it was in production for about 3 or 4 years. But the issue for Renegade Legion was that it was competing directly with BattleTech within the same company. and BattleTech was going through its huge early golden years at that point in time. So Renegade Legion was let go as a property, and then over time bits and pieces got sold off, and the trademarks were let lapse. And then when Josh was looking for a new project to do to start Budgie Smuggler Games up, which the name didn't even exist for the company then, that came later. Josh looked at different ways of doing things, different universes, old universes, and settled on Renegade Legion. So we went out and secured the trademarks for that, and then started to create this new universe for it, and to bring it to life, a whole new universe for a current generation of gamers. They can touch on some of those really big themes that the earlier iteration did.
Yeah, I just want to stop you for a second because I know a lot of listeners are game designers, and I know that it's kind of tricky, or a lot of people don't know what the process of acquiring an IP is like. Could you maybe touch on that? Like, who did you have to speak to, and just what did you have to do in order to get the rights for it?
So
Josh is probably the best one here, but I think the important thing too is that there's different parts of IP as well, and I think a lot of people get confused around that to start with.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're looking to republish a game using the original content, art, rule sets, the whole 9 yards, it's a very laborious and complicated process, especially if the intellectual property rights for those things are spread across multiple owners. Mm-hmm. In the case of Renegade Legion and actually some other older gaming systems like the Honorverse games that are connected to the Harrington book series, sometimes some things are completely lapsed and they're not owned by anybody. So it can be a little tricky to navigate that process. For our Renegade Legion with Budgie Smugglers, we opted to completely avoid any association or connection to the original universe whatsoever, except for some really iconic trademarks, so that we could create something that was applicable to modern gamers with a modern story that is worth telling. Mm-hmm. And a gaming system that's completely designed for modern tabletop players, because the old system, I don't know if you're familiar with it at all, was very much that old school 80s, like paper and pencil and hexes and a lot of tracking that way. So our game's a little bit more fast paced.
Yeah, I definitely felt that when I played the game. I was kind of expecting a table. To be honest, I haven't played any tabletop like classic games. The last thing I played was in about 2006. I played Warhammer, but other than that, mm-hmm. I play mostly like modern board games.
Right on.
When I played it, it had like a lot of like Euro feel almost to the way that actions work, and it wasn't at all what I was kind of expecting when I hear kind of a tabletop miniature game.
Yeah, and that was intentional. Mm-hmm. It's really funny when Matt and I first sat down and we started like putting this together. We knew immediately we didn't want to use hexes, just because we find that can be very limiting to players. Not that there's anything wrong with hexes, but when you have an hour and a half to play and you can just throw these things on the table with, let's say, if you don't have a lot of terrain, a few cans of soup will suffice as terrain on your table, and you can really get into a fun game and not have to maintain like all these hex sheets and worry about facings and things like that. So we tried to keep it as much detail as possible, and it's a really detailed game in my opinion. So it's not it doesn't lose that granularity that a lot of these more complicated older paper and pencil games have. But it plays really quick accordingly, and it does feel exactly like you said, which is what we were going for. I mean, and a lot of that is because of the work that Matt, Dale, and Jordan, those are two other members of our team, put into the rule set.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and on that too, one of the things that I think you picked up on this when we had the game with you was that we wanted it to feel a certain way. I've played a couple of other, of the more modern miniatures games like Star Wars Armada, and what drew me into that was it felt like the end of Return of the Jedi with these big ponderous ships and the fighters zipping between them, and it felt that way. It felt like you were in the movie. So when we were looking at the design of Renegade Legion for Centurion, we wanted it to feel like Grav Tank combat. So that's where we've got the altitude and the sliding and the skidding and things like that to give it that feel. At the same time, as Josh said, through a simple rule set that's really easy to understand, and then the granularity and the complexity of the game comes from the units themselves and the interaction between things like keywords and cards, so that it's easy to get into, but there's lots of depth there to explore once you're in.
Yeah, I think that's like a really probably the best combination to have to like be able to ease players into it, but then have that complexity come out through the situations of the game that happen throughout the game and through, as you said, like units. So like keeping it. I think it's so important to keep your games accessible, or kind of. I just think that's a huge plus. In my opinion, it's always good to do that. In fact, I recently heard a quote. I think it was Eric Lang, designer of a ton of games, on Twitter. He said, if you need a specific rule to address a small issue, usually you can solve small issues with very very in detail rules, but usually that's not the right decision to make. You need kind of a broader rule set. Where and I think you guys have done just that. You've kept it quite simple and to the point, and then like the smaller things are actually in game, like your actual units, like you said. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and for a new company too, that it's also a business decision. If you're a new company, you don't want to have barriers to entry to your first game. You want people to be able to easily approach it. Where if you do something quite complex and detailed and granular that requires a lot of effort to get into, it's going to raise a barrier of entry to potential new customers who might otherwise have a look at what you're doing. So that was one of those conscious things we had to think through as well.
And also looking at, to just piggyback off of what Matt said, and also looking at if you have that reduced barrier for entry into the game, that doesn't necessarily mean that the game itself has to be simple. It just means that it has to be able to expand outward at the pace of the gamer. You don't need to force feed or cram a lot of complexity and all crazy rule sets and stuff down a player's throat from the jump. You can ease them into that, and one of the ways we did that was by, as I like to call it, separating the lock from the key. So you have these really fantastic core mechanics that are easy to understand and makes for a fun game, and then by putting these things, the complexity, into cards that you can add to your game, means that it never feels like it's forced. It's always an add-on, and that allows us as a company to continue to develop a more complex game, and then provide this to players to use at their own speed. And again, if something doesn't work, it's as easy as saying, okay, well, don't use that card, or don't use that one little rule set. It doesn't, negate the entire box set that you currently possess. Just throw that card to the bottom of the pile. We'll get back to you. It's very simple to make corrections. Then if we find something that is broken or just doesn't work for our game, or our players really don't like it.
Yes, it's like a CCG approach almost, like
yeah,
with
a little bit,
cards,
in that kind of way.
Yeah. Could you tell me about like the rest of your team and working as a team? How do you do it? For people listening right now, we're in 3 different time zones, kind of, having this conversation. But like, how do you split? How do you make decisions together? How long have you been doing this as well? And just tell me about the team on Budgie Smuggler Games.
It's a funny one. We started very small, just Josh and I, and we catch up once or twice a week, and so we got into this sort of weekly pattern of meeting and talking over major issues. While between meetings, it'll be either emails, and we've kind of moved to Discord in a big way to manage what we do. And then over time, we started bringing in additional people. We identified pretty early what Josh and I could do and what we couldn't do. We can't draw to save our lives. I can't even do a stick figure. So we knew we were going to have to get really good artists and designers, and we knew we'd need people to help us with the rules. We knew we'd need someone to help develop the writing side of the universe. So we planned ahead for that. And then as we brought people in, we essentially interviewed them and talked in depth about what we were trying to achieve and where we'd see them fitting in, and wanted to give people coming in a lot of space to do what they do and and show their skills, because we were inviting in very experienced people with a lot of talent. And so we have quite a collaborative working environment where everyone has input to most things. Each person has the thing they're leading, but everyone helps and feeds in and provides feedback and comment on what we're doing. So that at the end of the day, we have this very um, small community that shares everything we do together. And then at the end of that process, you see these lovely looking games, like you said, the rule set that you've enjoyed playing in, which is the result of hundreds of conversations and emails and discords and testing that none of us could have achieved on our own. So by at times butting heads against each other, but also going out of our way to help each other, we've developed this system that's a really great little team to work in, and it's been really fun to produce these different things we've done as we've gone along. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much said it all. I mean, the collaborative effort in our team is pretty phenomenal. One of our first rules is check your ego at the door. It can be real easy to get fixated and hung up on something and think that's right and the only right way to do stuff. And working in a small team, especially one that's dispersed as much as we are, means you just have to take a step back, let something percolate and kind of filter down and think on it, and let's test it. Let's go through the process. Let's make this as clean as possible. And it makes for some really fantastic collaboration. And at the end of the day, we just want to make a really great game, a really great universe, and a really great product. So with those goals in mind, it's real easy to overcome like any difficulties that you might have working as a dispersed team. Also keeping in mind that most of us already have done that in the past. Everyone who's involved in Budgie has worked remotely in games in some capacity. So we all kind of like knew how this would work, even with the distance and the different time zones. It was more just finding our work groove within our group. Like, oh, so this is how you do stuff and this is how you approach things. And once we kind of figured out the team kinks, I mean, we went through development, I mean, like gangbusters. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And I think the acid test for that was the anthology we've just released leading into our crowdfunding campaign. Is that normally you could take 6 months to a year to do an anthology, and we went from writer's pitch to publication within, I think it was 8 or 10 weeks, and that was bringing in nearly a dozen authors and other people to help us. That included layout, art, everything from story pitches right through to the finished product, all done, with people scattered all over the world in different time zones. And the process went exceptionally well, and we got these 10 fantastic stories produced for this anthology for the start of Renegade Legion. And I think that alone was testament to the talent of the people we have and the system that we've built.
What Josh said about checking your ego at the door is probably the most important thing, and it's in my experience at least, that's when you can truly collaborate and you can truly think about what's actually best for the product and best for the game. And I think you guys are nailing it in that regard, from the sounds of it. What are the sort of functions of these other two people who are, like you said, that they're now also main parts of Budgie Smuggler games? I guess all of you do or take part in playtests and development of the game, from the sounds of it.
Yeah, everyone tries to have a hand in that part, especially because we are such a small team. So it's important that we have as many eyes on a game or a rule or something that we're thinking about doing with a product. Having as many eyes on something like that is really important to us. But as far as like where our specialties kind of lie, like what we lead or run, Dale does all of the kind of creative direction for the company, for Renegade Legion. Jordan is the head of our, as I like to call it, the art department. Matt, what else? Ben is involved. He runs, as I like to call it, the words. He does he actually coordinated all of the writers for the anthology, and managed that entire project like Matt said, like a really short span of time. But yeah, if you love the look and feel of the Renegade Legion game that you've seen so far, that is entirely the thematics of that are entirely Dale and Jordan.
Yeah, it's interesting that the different skills we each have. I can write rules. I can also write universe setting at great length, much to some people's great horror when they ask for half a page, and I'll give them 40 pages of material. Josh is great at doing that short writing, where I'm great at the other end, and Josh is also really good at the long form stuff as well. And Josh and I have a lot of skills in business. I can spend hours happily swanning about spreadsheets, working stuff out for the game or business. I quite enjoy that. Like we said, Dale's a brilliant engineer and designer, also an excellent graphics person. He's got this beautiful vision for just how things should look. And then Jordan is an artist as well, and just has this ability to just bring to life these amazing scenes and aliens, and bring these ideas we've had to absolute life. And Ben's an author as well, and an editor, and a great organizer. And then we've got other people in the team like John and Jenna and Andrea, who have these specific skills that then slot in and help us where we still have these other gaps, or just this other voice to say, oh, hang on, have you looked at it from this point of view as well? Consider this. And all these little elements that everyone does, they come together in this great whole.
Hey, I told you he says things better than I do. It's flat out. He did that perfectly. I sound like a bumbling idiot, and he said that perfectly.
I just like the sound of my own voice.
Well, it's the funny thing too. Like, if I ever want to go for a job interview, I really want Matt to just go into the office and read my CV to the prospective company, because he just does it just brilliantly when he talks. It's awesome. I can sit there and listen to him for hours. I do actually sit there and listen to him for hours.
My day job.
Yeah.
So what about you mentioned the business side of things. What are your plans for the game? Or I think you're going to be kickstarting it, but like, what are your plans for getting it out, marketing it, and just everything that's outside of the game that you need to do to get it to people's hands?
Well, we split that a bit between us. Josh is very much marketing, advertising. I have close to no skills in that area at all. I can be nice to someone on Twitter and have a chat on Facebook, but that's the scope of my skills in that area. My focus has very much been on the manufacturing side, working on the fulfillment, the manufacturing, getting the games into people's hands. I spent the last 12 months buried in all that sort of thing. We went out to, I think it was 12 manufacturers in the end, to look at who could possibly do this for us, about 7 different fulfillment companies, and everything else in between. So that was, where I was looking at how we actually build this thing practically, what it's really going to cost, and how can we get it to backers in the most efficient way. Where then, Josh is the best one to then talk about all the other side of things, the advertising and the social media.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've kind of split all of the social media work through myself and Dale and Jenna. And we're doing all the standard stuff through like Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, using ads and targeted ads and regular social media. But we're also working with a number of reviewers and playtesters. In fact, Dice Tower, Mark Street is somebody I'm working with right now. So we're gonna get some stuff out there so people can really see beyond what we've already put out through Tabletop Simulator and through our beta that went out through Drive-Thru RPG. What this game really, really looks like and how it plays, and it's brilliant. I mean, we have some prototype game boxes here, and miniatures, all painted by Dale, I might add, that are and Jordan, that are incredible. So we're gonna get all that information and all that, the video and visuals, out to everybody, so that they can be really jazzed as much as we are for our crowdfunding campaign.
When is the crowdfunding campaign scheduled?
I'm still waiting for Josh to talk. So it's
Mexican
scheduled
standoff.
for. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was coughing and I accidentally hit my mute button. August 2nd.
And that's on GameFound. We're really lucky to have been picked up by GameFound with their launch of moving into full crowdfunding themselves. They saw what we were doing with Renegade Legion and asked us to be part of the start of their official crowdfunding. They've been working through a beta process since late last year with several projects that started with ISS Vanguard, which was a brilliant first campaign for them to lead off with. And we've been working really closely with them over I've got the coughs too. Working with them over the last couple of months to get ourselves ready, and we're getting all the page put together at the moment so that we can have that up shortly for people to come and pre-register for the campaign.
I mean, that was an absolute amazing confluence of just lucky things to get us all together with GameFound, who have been absolutely brilliant partners in getting us ready for this crowdfunding. And I mean, Matt really drove that initial relationship and getting everything put together with them. And I'm really excited because working with them thus far has been really nice. And being able to bring our game to GameFound this early with them is like a match made in heaven.
When did you start working on the project? Like, when did the idea of just getting this whole thing rolling start off, and how long did it take you to get to this point where that you're crowdfunding and you've got a team and everything?
I'd been working with Catalyst with BattleTech for a really long time, and I'd kicked around for years the idea of starting my own game company. But even prior to that idea, I just wanted to potentially revive things that I love that would be pertinent to now. And so I got this idea in my head that I was like, man, I would really love to create an all-new, brand new Renegade Legion. And actually what provided the opportunity to do this, I hate to even say it, was COVID. So COVID is, ripping through the United States. Everything is shut down. And even just prior to that, with the writing on the wall, I was like, this is, I might have some time here. And I immediately thought of Matt. I couldn't think of a better person to partner with. And so almost around the time as the lockdowns hit here, I was like, hey, man, we need to do this. And it's actually a really funny story. I sent Matt an email and I said, hey, man, I want to talk to you about something. Can you sign this NDA? Yeah. I said, can you sign this NDA? And he wrote back, we were about to die, salute you. And I looked around because, that's a reference from Gladiator. And it's obviously very Roman. And I looked around at my office like, does he have a camera in here? Does he know what I'm about to talk to him about? It blew my mind. And
so
obviously,
those not familiar.
Yeah.
Those not familiar. The old Renegade Legion had a big Roman flavor in it. And my son's middle name is Willis, and I love Roman history. And I'd literally just watched Gladiator and threw that line out at him just for no reason.
Yeah, it blew my mind, and that was like, I'm like, oh, okay, this is meant to be. And so because of COVID and the lockdown and the amount of additional time available, we just dove into this thing, and it very quickly just coalesced, and from there, and so we picked up over the intervening months, Dale, and then Dale brought in Jordan. And then towards the end of 2020, I brought in Ben with Matt's blessing, and we've been rocking and rolling ever since. So the vast majority of everything you've seen was all done in 2020 in the span of a year.
Yeah,
we're about 3 weeks off a year of full hard work. We talked before that, but we're coming up at our year anniversary of when we really got into things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny that so many people, I've heard that from quite a few people, including myself. I went full time with PlayerLayer because of the lockdown, and again for me, it took me a couple of months before I could before it actually became sustainable for me. From a financial perspective, but because my other job, just to put context to it, I was a full time musician before that. And
right on.
I had like no gigs for a couple of months, but before that we had won a couple of board game design contests, and it's something that I had wanted to do as well. And I've heard that from several guests on the podcast that it was like, oh, these like 2 or 3 months we had wanted to make a game for years, and like they realized that they can do it, and it turns out that for a lot of people it's been a sort of blessing in disguise for, you know, just for acting on things that they've been putting off because of your like daily stuff that you would do, and just having that time.
It's
I think
it's amazing how many people feel guilty kind of when they say that too.
Yeah.
They feel guilty, and they shouldn't. I mean, honestly, there was a period of time I was like, man, felt kind of guilty too. But you know, even in the midst of tragedy, worldwide tragedy, you know, it can give us all an opportunity to redirect and start doing the things that we love.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
I also think games during the pandemic, there's been, at least from my point of view, a real embrace of them because with some of the digital tools we have now, you can play online against people still, but they're one of those comfort things that can make you give you a really good feeling during times that can otherwise be hard. And I think it's the pandemic has been terribly hard for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Within the gaming community, there's been this real outpouring of support and help and camaraderie within it, which has been really lovely.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
I just look at the explosion of interest in RPGs as a whole, which I mean you could trace back actually all the way to the at least in the United States, the great recession of the mid 2000s, where gaming really tabletop gaming in particular and board games in particular took off like crazy here in the States because of how tight money was and the rise of things like Kickstarter, but especially in the pandemic, the rise of continual rise and expansion of interest in RPGs and role playing in general has been like really awesome. And like Matt said, like thanks to some digital tools, especially things like Zoom, you could still have that human connectivity, that connection with people, and still be able to play, even though you might be locked down in your house for 4 or 5 months and not necessarily have a job or anything else. And that kind of outlet, I think, especially in the stressful times of 2020, saved a lot of people's lives, to be honest.
Oh yeah, people forget that that's also something that I think you need to have something to, some form of I guess entertainment or socialization, or like that's when I started doing a lot of tabletop simulator, like playing games on there with friends, and I know a lot of people did, like for tabletop simulator and like Tabletopia and all of those platforms. Like it just sales skyrocketed, but also things like you wouldn't even expect, like solo gaming. There's like the first, or at least the only published solo only games, board games. I think were in 2020 and 2021. I hadn't seen any before. Well, Friday is a game that is an older one, but still, just so many people, like you said, RPGs, solo games, the online community. It's just it's still something that people I think not even just want to do. They need some form of like it adds value to their lives, and
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have not played a game of BattleTech in, I can't even begin to tell you how many years, but during the pandemic, just as like a little form of camaraderie, the internal development team, like between the volunteers and the freelance writers and the assistant line developers and so on and so forth, they put together an impromptu online convention, and we got to do like a Masters and Minion game with Mega Mech.
That was so much fun.
Yeah, it was literally the first time I played BattleTech in years and years, and here I am playing online BattleTech with people all over the world in the midst of a pandemic, excuse me. And it was hilarious, mostly because I couldn't remember any of the rules or how to play that game at all. And I work in that. Oh my god, I can't believe I said that out loud. But it was awesome. And I don't think that would have happened had COVID not been present in everyone's life.
What are your future plans? Are you already thinking about? Because I know, like, as creators go usually when they get near presenting their project to the public, they're already thinking about the next one. Do you have what are your ideas going forward with the company, with making games? Yeah.
Oh man, that's a loaded question. I love it.
Yeah.
It's funny you said as we get close, man. I think us as a team, we've been thinking about the next things for a few months now, actually. Just because as having creative people in a team, it's so easy to just have a weekly conversation, a weekly meeting, just kind of go off the rails into the next game idea. And it's like, oh man, write that down. Don't forget that. So yeah, we've been thinking about the next stuff for a long time. But as far as Renegade Legion is concerned, we have some really great plans for expansions for the game line and the fiction. I'm particularly excited about the fiction. I don't know if Matt talked in too much detail with you prior to this about the first anthology that we just released and our plans for our future anthologies moving forward. Did he get into that at all with you?
Well, I think when we last talked, it was right around the time when you guys were releasing it.
Okay. So our plans for Renegade Legion fiction is kind of twofold. I mean, we're going to release some really fantastic in-universe material with the campaign and moving forward from the campaign. But one of the things that we wanted to highlight about the Renegade Legion universe was a diverse set of voices. And so our first anthology and our future anthologies kind of represent that. We have an incredible array of writers from all walks of life that each provided a different genre of story. So the anthology has a mystery story, it has horror, it has adventure, it has all kinds of has romance. Oh my God, the romance one is fantastic. Story in it. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to highlight not only in obviously the composition of the writers and the genre of stories, but also a diversity of stories within the universe itself. And so that you can get this great feel of the width and breadth of the entire Renegade Legion universe. And our goal is to continue to provide anthologies like that, using that format to really dive into all the really neat and fun things that everyone as a reader might be interested in. And one of the reasons why we decided to do that is if you've ever picked up a Warhammer book, it's really only one format, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just who's going to die, how gory and bloody is the battle going to be, and do we even care about this character because it's grim, dark, and nothing ever changes. I love you, Games Workshop. Please don't kill me. So that is why that joke's going to fall real flat. I'm sorry. So that is why it was really important for us to kind of create a fiction format that's a little different. We really wanted to have the Renegade Legion universe speak to as many people as possible, because the galaxy, the world, our world is a huge, diverse, and beautiful place. And so that's going to kind of be the guiding mantra for our fiction moving forward.
And that also supports the plans we've got for looking forward to an RPG for the universe as well. Mm-hmm. So the fiction helps set the stage around there. And like Josh is saying, we've really got to focus on, we wanted to build a diverse and inclusive writing team and core team of Budgie Smuggler Games as well. And we want to have writers and characters and settings and places that anyone can see. I can have a place in here that I can be part of and be welcomed into and explore and celebrate with everyone around me. And so having this rich universe around the games, such as Centurion or the RPG and anything else we want to do with the universe going forward, this rich setting helps you set your games and your characters somewhere where you can feel connected to. And that was one of the big things we wanted to do. It's not just putting miniatures out on the table. It's immersing yourself in a whole experience of what it means for those miniatures to be on the table in the bigger picture of this whole great universe that you're playing within.
What would be something that you'd recommend to somebody who wants to jump in and start a project, or basically who wants to do what you're doing, and make games? What would be your advice towards somebody like that?
So to answer your question, my advice for anyone who wants to get into games and create a game for themselves is take your idea, run with it, find people who you can work well with, who share the same vision, who won't take no for an answer in terms of any walls or obstacles or complications that you might meet. And I'd say don't lose hope. Maintain that enthusiasm that you have for your game, regardless of what comes down the pike, because we live in a world today where we as individuals have the opportunity to create a game on our own and get it out to the world. And all you have to do is just kind of stick with it, because at the end of the day, if you think it's fun and it's fun, then that means there's probably plenty of people out there who are also going to think it's fun and will have fun. And that means your game should be made. So make your game, man, because games are fun, and I can't see a world where we'll ever turn down a game, right? So just keep making them, because you never know. It could be a massive hit, and even if it's not, you made something, and you should be super proud of that. Creating is awesome, so never stop. That's my advice. Never stop creating. Just go for it.
I think when you've got this wonderful idea, like Josh has said, and go out and create, I think the next step of that is then, in order to create that, do research, read everything you can about the style of game you want to play, you want to make, or the universe you might want to create, or if you're looking to acquire an IP, what that means. Because the process of taking that vision, once you've got your team and your people together, to reality, it always takes a hell of a lot more than you think up front. No matter how well you plan, things are going to pop up. So having all this research behind you and all the work, it helps you get through those speed bumps when you get to them. We've done an enormous amount of research on all sorts of things leading through this, and we're still learning as we go along. I started looking at crowdfunding well back when we started out on this path, went to Jamie Stegmeier's blog and started there, and then branched out from there to everything else I could find, and talked to all sorts of people about it, so that when we get into the campaign itself, we're as fully prepared as we can be. So yeah, to realize the vision, you have to do the work behind it. It takes a lot of work to bring something like this to life. Smaller games, maybe not as much effort, but there's still a lot in there you might not consider. And yeah, finding those right people with those skills and talents, and the energy and the belief that you have as well. Yeah, that's really important, like Josh said.
Yeah, I think the last thing I would add to that is be curious, ask questions. Matt said it. He did a lot of research, and we all asked a ton of questions. I mean, no matter how experienced you are in games, there's always something you don't know, and there's always someone out there who can help. So just ask questions too. Be curious. It will make a tremendous difference.
Yeah, what are some of the questions that you asked, or that you were surprised to by the answer of, maybe, or what are things that you learned so far?
Matt, you want to field that one first?
It costs how much?
Yeah, there it is.
I had these grandiose dreams of how much we'd put in the box and what it would be, and then and that was in our very early conversations when we were like really excited. Oh, we could do this and we could do that, and then we went, okay, let's go out and see what we can actually do. And we're like, oh, it costs that much. Okay, well, we'll do this. So that's an important question for people to ask up front. Is how much is it actually going to take to do this? I think one of the best questions we've asked of people is, would you like to be part of this? We are doing this. Would you like to be part of it? And I think when you approach someone creative with the opportunity to be involved in something very, very early in its formative stages, that can be a great challenge and inspiration to them. And I think that was the conversation we had with Dale and Jordan and Ben as we're bringing them in. the excitement they got from being able to be part of something early by us saying, would you like to be part of this? I think was one of the most interesting responses to the questions we've had as we've gone through, because it was so positive and embracing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure. I mean, that's spot on. For me, it was the best question I ever asked was to our first group of authors for the anthology was, what do you think about dot dot dot? And because our universe is so new, and Matt and I, we spent so much time preparing the universe. We wrote, I think, easily each like 100,000 words of fiction for the universe, just kind of creating the meta framework, which a lot of it you can see. We've posted a ton of it on our Patreon, which is free, and you can go in and read a lot of our development posts. But we also did a ton of in-universe work, and we put it actually all to the side, and we made this really bare bones primer for the universe for the authors, because we didn't want to impact their story ideas. And so we went to this great group of diverse authors, and it was like, what do you think about dot dot dot? And then just watching these super creative people who are professional fiction writers, and just watch their creative wheels spin was phenomenal. I mean, they came up with all kinds of stuff that, in comparison to what I had previously written by myself, I was like, oh yeah, mine's garbage, we're gonna throw that out, let's just keep this is way better. So asking people, what do you think about dot 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 is the best question I think you could ever ask.
Yeah.
And their questions then came back at us. We'd say, here's this, and then they'd ask us, oh, but have you thought about this, and what would you do there? And we'd be like, oh wow, yeah, we've got to think through this as well. And then this whole new process would start.
Yeah, it was very, very tangential. Everything it was like a crazy branch from one thing to the next, and that made a huge difference with our story development.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it sounds like I love, there's quite a few things that I love about your approach. First of all, I love the camaraderie and finding people and being okay with sharing your project, and not, because and I may have said this before on the podcast, but a lot of people just strangle their own projects by not showing them to anyone, and kind of being afraid to playtest with people. And it could be for a variety of reasons. Of course, everyone knows your game is going to start off really bad. Most likely, it's not gonna. It's it takes time, and it takes that's why you do development. That's why you bring it to playtesters, and that's why you get other people involved. And I think you guys have caught on to that. By the sounds of it. And I love the other thing that I really love is how you got a different medium in it, and that's like it's just amazing. When you can expand on that lore, whether it be and in this case it's collaborating with people outside of games. So now it's like growing, and I just think that's awesome when done. Just it's something that I love, and it sounds like it's something that you guys love as well. And hopefully, people are gonna appreciate it, and yeah, I just think it's a great idea.
Yeah, we love world building, and Ben, who led the development of the Voices of Arena anthology, he's a world builder too, and I could lose myself for hours in creating these alien species, and Ben can do the same thing, and Josh was spending all this time bringing the Tog to life. And the nicest thing about doing something like that is then sharing it with others, because they add to it. We have one species called the Cardrona, and I made a couple of notes about what their writing system and their language was like. And the author that came in to write a story that had the Cardrona in them is a linguist. And I think she's also into calligraphy as well, and has studied several different languages, and was like, oh, this is wonderful, I can so connect with this species. And then wrote all this extra material you don't even see in the story about them that will become part of the Cardrona. And that's just so wonderful to see people taking your idea and running with it and making it so much more beautiful.
Yeah, there's always somebody out there who is either A, smarter than you, or B, more worldly and cultured than you, or better read, or just is better at something because of what they do in their real life job, as I like to say. And again, if you check your ego at the door, really beautiful and surprising things can happen if you just listen. It's pretty incredible. I like Matt said, I put a ton of work into the TOG, and one of the core concepts around the TOG was this idea of assimilation, where everybody in the TOG is human, regardless of your species. It's the overriding cultural drive of the TOG, and we have a native writer, an indigenous writer who obviously cultural destruction and cultural appropriation is a really touchy subject for her because of, obviously what the United States has done historically to indigenous peoples here in this country. And so the TOG's idea of assimilation, working with her, really came into its mature form with the questions and things that she asked, because that was very real for her. And it showed in her writing. It's really awesome.
Yeah, that's a very powerful story, that one. That was that was something we were hoping. We wanted to give people with very, very different voices and very different perspectives, especially within what can be a very white male dominated community within the wargaming space, the opportunity to tell these stories and communicate with other people, and for other people to then understand these different perspectives on gaming and the universe and the world in general. And it came through in the game design as well. Like Josh and I and John had brought the original initial rule set together, and then Dale and Jordan took that away without us knowing and said, okay, we're visual designers, let's help these guys, because we think if they did this and this, the game would be a lot better. And they came back and presented it to us, and it was, I think we must have talked for 2.5 hours that day, Josh.
Easily.
But
their
ideas made it so much better. Just by listening and giving them the opportunity to be able to do that, and without, not worrying about it, knowing that we would at least give them the time to listen. And what then you got to play the other day when you were doing the play testing, we had a chat, is a lot of what you saw in the visuals was the result of those guys going away and thinking about how they could take these ideas and make them so much better through clever visual design.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So could you tell people how they could find out more about the game, or where, actually, not how, where?
So you can find us on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram under Budgie Smuggler Games. You can also find us on the web, budgiesmugglergames.com. And very soon, also our crowdfunding GameFound page and link will also be up. But you can go to budgiesmugglergames.com for all of the latest and most pertinent information. It links to our Patreon. It links to all of our social media. And so that would be your primary source for all things Budgie and Renegade Legion right now.
Awesome. I'll also leave links in the podcast so people can easily just click. And thank you guys so much for coming on and talking to me. It was just
thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah,
really appreciate it.
This is awesome.
Yeah.